Today I'm going to talk about happiness in a certain particular, from a certain perspective, which I'll share with you in a minute. But what I want to base this discussion on is a section in the Dhammapada, which is entitled Happiness. And it's the verses, and I'm going to show you on the screen in a minute, but I thought I would just read it first to give you a sense of it. This section of the Dhammapada is the verses 197 to 208, and it goes like this. Let us live so very happily, kind among hostile people, let us live with kindness. Let us live so very happily, healthy among ailing people, let us live healthily. Let us live so very happily, content among greedy people, let us live content. Let us live so very happily, we who have nothing, we shall feed on rapture like the gods of streaming radiance. Victory breeds enmity, the defeated sleep badly, the peaceful sleep at ease, having left victory and defeat behind. There's no fire like greed, no crime like hate, no suffering like the aggregates, no bliss beyond peace. Hunger is the worst disease, sankhara are the worst suffering. For one who truly knows this, nibbana is the highest happiness. Health is the highest blessing, contentment, the highest wealth. A trustworthy person is the best kinsman, nibbana, the highest happiness. Having drunk the nectar of seclusion and the nectar of peace, free of stress, free of evil, one drinks the joyous nectar of Dhamma. It's good to see the noble ones. Staying with them is always blissful. You'd always be happy to not see fools. For one who consorts with fools grieves long. Painful is dwelling with fools, like being stuck with your enemy. Happy is dwelling with a sage, like meeting with your kin. Therefore, follow a sage, wise and learned, steadfast in virtue, true to their vows, noble. Follow a good and intelligent person such as this, as the moon tracks the path of the stars. So I wanted to just...
You saw, dude, that was beautiful.
Thank you. And I want to just share the screen for this. It's in there. Just have to switch over here. So I think you can see it now. So I started with Bhante Sujato's translation, and then I changed a few things that I like better, and I might have to do a little editing more, but we'll see as we go through. So I'm giving this talk about happiness, but it's also actually about some of our deepest times of suffering. So I asked someone what I should talk about today, and they said, talk about, I'm going to read my note, talk about utter discouragement, deflation, and defeat. Like when you feel like Mara's winning this round. When I heard the description, I thought it's like feeling like you've been through a meat grinder. And of course, this can really happen to us, you know, one thing after another coming along that's hard to take. And what do we do? How do we come back from that? How do we develop resilience? How do we develop stability? And as I was thinking about this, I was remembering what I called the worst year of my life. This was long before I met the Dhamma. I was living in California with a single mom with my two teenage children. And I had a job I really liked. I was in a good relationship. I had just bought a house. I was happy. And then the worst year started. The first thing was that the company I was working for decided to leave California, and they were going to a part of the country that I didn't want to go to, and my kids didn't want to move, which I could totally understand. And so I had to find a different job, which I did, fortunately, but it was stressful. And then shortly into the job, very shortly really, my son, riding his bike home from school, got hit by a drunk driver and went to the hospital with a broken leg and a brain concussion. And he had a puncture wound in the back of his calf that I could put my finger in, like up, I didn't, but if I did want to, my finger would go up to like the second knuckle into that. The kickstand had punctured his leg. That's what broke it. And I had to dress this wound twice a day, where I had to roll up sterile gauze and stick it in there. And, it's just caring for someone, of course, is a beautiful thing, but with working and, it was hard. And then my relationship broke up. And I was so sad, so depressed. I just wanted to go into bed and hide under the covers. that was it. And of course I didn't. But it just felt like too much. And then I had this health scare where I was told I had a tumor. Anyway, it felt like the worst year of my life. And without the Dhamma, it's hard to remain steady. But that's in the past. And it's just a good reminder of how life can throw one thing after another at us sometimes. And then to think about how the Dhamma helps us to be resilient and where to put our attention when this is the kind of thing we're going through. So living happily, let us live so very happily, kind among the hostile. Now the Pali word that I'm using for where I'm using the word kind could also mean peaceful. So peaceful among the hostile, or friendly among the hostile. Among hostile people, let us live with friendliness, or let us live peacefully. Let us live so very happily, healthy among the ailing. And I don't think that the Buddha means here that it's just physical health, like I think about that teaching he gives where regardless of the health of the body, we have the healthy mind. So it's like, let us live happily with this healthy mind among people who are not living in a healthy way. So, like hearing someone this morning saying, being around people who aren't practitioners can make it harder for us to stick with, maybe with, I don't know what was happening in that instance, but, having our attention on things that are important, that help to lift us up, that are virtuous, that can be challenging. Let us live very happily content among the greedy, even though, it can be hard around people who are really, the values are much more about acquiring or gaining things. And then, can we live content anyway? Living happily, having nothing, but turning to inner peace, inner joy, feeding on rapture. Sometimes when things are really hard, it's hard to meditate, of course, and that's also normal. But finding some aspect of the Dhamma to help us, any glimmer of light that comes through can be something that, draws us, that we follow. Whether it's chanting or listening to a Dhamma talk or walking meditation or just being out in nature, or, finding whatever source of wholesome focus to help us. Sometimes, when things are really hard, we have to just focus on the moment. You bring your attention in. You keep ourselves from going out too far into the future, and just, be present in this moment, be stable for this hour, get through this afternoon, through this day. And then, like, things change. It changes, it gets better, the mind clears, the mind accepts. Victory breeds enmity. So, this is the kind of thing where I think it's not just about war, of course, it's about, competition. It's about trying to beat out our rival, or it's about winning or losing the argument. When at some point in our development, we recognize that it's much more beneficial to be kind, to be happy, than to be the winner. And it's better to give way. There's no fire like greed. So knowing that our desires are the cause of so much suffering. There's no crime like hate. So how our mind is disposed, what's the state of our mind? Again, so crucial. No suffering, like having 5 aggregates. No bliss beyond peace. I mean, there's no bliss greater than peace. When it says here that hunger is the worst disease, I think that can mean physical hunger, but it also is that hunger of craving. And so much of the time we have that kind of hunger, or sometimes the Buddha uses thirst instead. If we are hungry or thirsty when we actually have food and water, metaphorically, if we actually already have enough, but we're still wanting more, that's a desire that never gets fulfilled. So it's like there's no end to that. And when we know that, and we can see that come up in ourselves, then we can let go. So the sankhara, of course, is conditioned things, and I can't remember what the original translation was, but I plugged sankhara in there because just knowing that it's like everything in this world, it just all has this limitation of being impermanent and not self. When we truly know this, then we know that nibbana is the highest happiness. And I really appreciate this part about a trustworthy person. This is the person that feels more like family, maybe, than anyone that we're related to. Where it's really, really beautiful if people we're related to are trustworthy. Having drunk the nectar of seclusion and the nectar of peace, free of stress, free of evil, one drinks the joyous nectar of the Dhamma. So how do we get to that? from that place of having maybe feeling like bombarded by the disappointments and pressures and, you know, I can't think of another, like the attacks of samsara. I mean, it's like, it's really through turning around, not looking at what other people are saying or doing, not looking at, imagining what could happen. And one thing I didn't say about that terrible year I had was that when that relationship broke up, it wasn't so much about missing him, it was the shattering of my dream to have my family be complete again. That was the ideal in my mind. I didn't even realize it at the time. It took time, it took reflection to see that that was really what was so hard to take, giving that idea, like that image of what is a complete family. It has the husband, father there. And so letting go of that and seeing that it's complete already with my beautiful children, it's like so much of the suffering comes because of our views. We have these ideas that we want fulfilled. And when they go against nature, like we want this perfect picture completed, and it isn't the way nature works, then we suffer. And then, of course, these verses about the noble ones are so beautiful. Knowing that there is development on the path available to us, and that we can keep those kinds of friends and associates around us. And sometimes that in itself can be the one light in the darkness that helps us go forward. Having a good friend. Even if a person gets to a point where we feel miserable about ourselves, if we have that good, virtuous friend, we can reflect on, if they're willing to be my friend, then I must not be so bad. I know that may sound pretty dark, but sometimes we can be in a dark place and we need to find our way out, or know that we can have the endurance to let that condition dissolve and see the light of day. So I'm interested in hearing what this might evoke for you, and any questions you might have, or comments, or sharing. And welcome, Steve and Lillian. Have you ever had these kinds of dark times?
That was beautiful. Thank you for reading that and talking about that. Ah, that part of the about hate, the crime of hate. Oh, that resonates me with so deeply. So I'm in an hour or so. I'm about to go see my ex-wife, probably for the last time. She's dying, and we had a really, I haven't spoken to her in almost 15 years, and we had a very bitter relationship, and I don't think I've ever really hated anyone except her. And I just saying that out loud kind of makes me feel just a little bit lost of how do I then to approach her bedside. And it feels gone. It feels like the resentment is gone, and yet I'm afraid. I'm afraid of that it's still there in some way. Uh, and I don't know really what I'm afraid of. And maybe it's just because beneath that, there was once this really beautiful relationship that produced a wonderful daughter. And and it just feels like, oh, there's still love there that I don't want her to die. And and yet there are times when I've wished for this very thing. Uh, she was very abusive to my daughter, and I don't know what to do. I don't know except to be here uh, and to treat this as a sacred moment, like this is right now, speaking to you. This gift that I've been given. What a tremendous gift this is to be able to reflect on this this ritual of being with someone while they die that I could never have gotten here uh, the way that I was going without being introduced to the Dharma, without you, without this sangha. That I'll be okay. I am okay, and and it really is possible. I believe it feels like it's really possible to let go of hate, and that so it's wonderful to be here to carry you with me as I go through this. I feel so much less alone now than I did a half hour ago. So thank you.
Thank you, Denny. Yeah, sometimes we're really able to see what part of our experience and our feelings and our thoughts are really nonsense, all the negativity. And then we can just say, I'm setting that all aside. We just put it down. And love, going back to the part that's the love. And everybody makes mistakes. We all go through these feelings. Sometimes we're skillful and sometimes we're not. And other people are the same. Can we just forgive? See what's really important. The image of you that she can take with her in case you meet again. May it be with kindness. Thank you. Hannah?
Thank you, Aya. Thank you for reading that. I remember the first time that I heard that sutta, it was my best friend and I were, I think we were at a Zoom retreat, and the teacher was reading it and talking about it. And I remember the first time that I heard the section, there's no fire like greed, no crime like hate, no suffering like the aggregates, no bliss beyond peace. That small section just made so much sense to me. It's like it brought it all together, all of what I experience in the hindrances and, the causes and conditions of why I think some of the things that I do, why I suffer with the things that I do. And it was just this immense amount of comfort that 4 lines could provide, such understanding. And since hearing it, my best friend, he loved it so much. It's now his the signature for his email, because he just wants to share just the comfort that comes from those lines. And even for people who are not on the path, I think that it can still be encouraging. And recognizing now with my reflections of even the part that you spoke about with the hunger, and seeing how I have been hungry and thirsty my whole life, not for hate and not for greed, but for craving. I have been hungry and thirsty for things to be different than they are. And I have wasted so much of my life in suffering of being 10 steps ahead or 500 steps ahead, and just missing out on what's happening right now. And now that I have that understanding, I am in a place, and I have been for the last 3 years since my car accident that I spoke about last week, and having 7 surgeries in a year and a half, and now finding out that I need 2 more, and still suffering from the cognitive deficits of a brain injury and all these things. And it's all piling up at once. And I'm not reacting to it. I'm responding. And I think that is, and I know that's all to do with the Dharma, and all to do with what this is talking about, is understanding that it's only as painful as I allow it to be, because I'm choosing the suffering, and I'm choosing that second arrow. And now I find myself really trying to use equanimity to balance between allowing myself to feel the feelings when they are, and almost jumping ahead to that compassion of, and I'll be okay, because I tend to do that. I've always been very optimistic, and it has served me very well. And I think it has also harmed me in when I'm living from top to bottom, so from mind to body, then I get my mind okay before my body's okay. And then I just store all of that energy in my body. So now I'm really trying to focus on the balance of feeling the feelings as they're there and not rushing through them. And I recognize that I can tend to use the Dharma in a way of aversion, to be like, well, it's out of my control, and right now it's like this, and that is true, and my body still has a right to feel disappointment and pain and sadness. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Hannah. It's an amazing balance. Is that the right word? You know, like you said, not going into either the identification with feeling and taking it like it's me and mine, being lost in it, overwhelmed by it, awash in it, but to just be present with it, but to really be present with it, like you said, not rushing ahead, not shoving it under the rug, and knowing the whole time that it's going to change. It's not always going to feel this way. And what are the things that we bring into our life that help us to let go of those feelings, let them pass in their own time? And I liked what you're saying about the body. It's like we want to be with this body even though it's in pain. Physical pain is one thing. The emotional pain that goes through our body is another thing. And that one we can let shake off, process through. Thank you. Let's take a little time to meditate. Just get comfortable. Just a few minutes. Well, let's see, we've got some time. Maybe we'll take about 20 minutes. We'll see if there's anything else people would like to discuss. So always when we begin, helping the body to be as comfortable as it can be. It's so beneficial that the Buddha talked about meditation sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. Basically, we can meditate in any posture. Have your back relatively straight. Relax your arms and legs. Take a few deeper breaths. Let go of tension in the body. Check the state of the mind. Regardless of whether the mind is in a negative mental state or a positive mental state, we can still smile. Smile in resonance with a happy, uplifted mental state, or a smile in kindness and compassion for a mind that's stressed and suffering. So when we check on the mental state, on the state of our mind, what is that? That knowing, that seeing, that observes the mind. We know we are not that mental state. You don't have to own it or identify with it. It's kind of like the weather report. Whatever is there is passing through. And we can bring things into our mind to shine some light, to bring some relief. You can think about the beautiful qualities of the Buddha, or maybe someone else in our life, someone we look up to. We can think about the beautiful qualities in ourselves. Our own kindness, our own compassion, our own virtue. Our own generosity, our own wisdom. And if we can't think of that right now, we can remember our good friends, our loved ones, our teachers, our companions on the path. We can remember the beautiful teachings that turn us away from competition, envy, anger, hatred, superiority, inferiority, desire, and ground us and settle us in peace and contentment. An understanding and feeling of what's noble and true, the Dhamma, immediately available right here, right now. We might blame ourselves for things or blame others for things, but my experience is that the Dhamma is so much more generous. The things we've done wrong, when we turn to do things differently, we bring in the wholesome. The unwholesome fades. It can be forgiven, let go of. And as we settle the mind, we use our meditation object to bring the mind to stillness. And spiritual happiness begins to come in. Lifting up the mind. the unwholesome things in life, the unwholesome actions, the down-pulling thoughts fade, dissolve. And what comes into that space is happiness and joy, love, kindness, acceptance. And if we get to the point where the mind becomes very, very still, even for a moment, without disturbance, we also may find wisdom arising there, leading onwards to deeper understanding, to a knowing that changes our entire life. something I want to bring attention to that we've talked about many times before, but to remember that we suffer because of the way we think. And even saying that was the worst year of my life, that was the label I put on it then. And by the way, I forgot to say that I broke my collarbone during that time too, which was part of the depression. It was like, but that label, in a way, we can use a label to help us, but it can also be used as a way of emphasizing the negativity. And we have to be careful about that. When we reinforce in our mind how bad it all is, we bring more suffering. When we do as the Buddha did and talk about the naturalness of these things, this is what happens to human beings. It's not only happening to me, it happens to many people. It's happening to many other people right now, whatever it is. And that we can, find ways to take it in stride, make our stride stronger, longer. Yeah, Neil?
Yeah, during the meditation, I had an observation, and so I'm here this morning with my very sick cat, who I've been trying to nurse in different ways for several weeks now. And I was thinking, well, so while you were speaking, she went over and started eating some food, and she hasn't been able to eat for several days now. And even like if I open a can of something that she likes and she gets the aroma, she comes, but then I put it out for her and she sniffs it, and it's as if it makes her, like I would say it make me gag to smell it. So it's like she can't eat it, even though she wants it. And just while you were talking earlier, she went and ate a lot more than she has in days. And I was so happy about that. Meanwhile, when we're done here, I take her to the vet for a follow-up. And for the past several days, I've been assuming, because she hasn't been eating, that this is going to be the end for her. And so what I'm getting to is I had this observation that human beings, we have this ability, something that separates us from animals, particularly cats in this case, is that we have an ability to observe our cravings, which therefore we have the ability to end our own cravings and achieve sort of the ultimate happiness. Cats don't have that type of consciousness, as far as I can tell. And so it seems to me that in the life of a cat, the ultimate happiness is in satisfying their cravings. Mm-hmm. And so what I started thinking was, well, if she's still in a place where she can satisfy her cravings, she still has spirit in her. And what I hadn't anticipated is that when I go now at 11 o'clock, unless the vet tells me something completely different, I'm going to ask for another hydration tube bag and keep hydrating her until she's at a place where she absolutely shows no desire at all. So it just struck me as interesting that what I see in her, this essence of desire is such a positive thing that I'm seeing in her. I don't know quite where I'm going with this, but I'm just happy that I had this observation, because she's laying down now, and I mean, I'm projecting somewhat, I'm sure. I feel like she's relatively contented. The thing is, I've never had the sense that she's been in any pain. If that were the case, I would feel much differently about this. But I feel like she's still with me. And so I'm gonna try to keep her around for a while longer. I have no idea what that has to do with happiness, but there you are. I had to share it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I hope you don't mind if I draw some conclusions or some points from that.
As long as I agree with them, it's okay.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
well, I don't know if you're thinking about that would be the end for her because of this. We have very strong conditioning in our culture now that we should be observing and determining when a pet should be put down. And if you've never experienced the sense that she's having any pain, why even think about that? Why not just let nature take its course? Of course, you're kind of interfering with nature a little bit when you're hydrating her, but that seems compassionate and innocent, support.
Well, can I just interject one thing?
Yeah.
So yesterday was the first time that she, let's say, missed the litter box and she peed outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is some selfishness in that thought that has been arriving, which is, I rent and I can't,
Yeah.
the last place I rented, I lost because a cat, an old cat died in the closet. And I lost my, I didn't lose it because of that, but I lost my security deposit because the landlady had to spend so much money cleaning the scent of, stuff, I don't know, out of the carpet. So she said, so I'm thinking about stuff like that too. And I mean, if she can't, but yes, no, I do agree with you. I do agree with you.
Well, living beings are messy. There's no two ways about it. And they're also expensive in our culture. So in a sense, yeah, there's going to be some mess. And yeah, something to think about, something to think about when we take on having a living being under our care. How far am I willing to go with this living being? So just some thoughts, and to remember that being with any living being in this process of dying is quite a gift.
Well, and just to add one thing so that you'll all hate me now.
Oh dear.
She's only 3.5. So consider, how could I have even considered putting her to sleep? But my previous cat also died at 3.5.
Oh.
So I'm starting to feel like I better not have any more cats. I have bad voodoo or something.
No. Thank you, Neil. Linda?
Thank you, Aya. No, it's just really beneficial to hear, and just a few things popped into my mind, and sort of taking in what the verses said and some of your comments, and just what comes to mind was that it feels like it kind of boils down to wise attention and wise association. And just reflecting on that, both in terms of how they support each other, actually. You know, like how the divorces ended, and just thinking about how they, you know, reinforce each other. And also just thinking about, you know, in a way, kind of chuckling a little bit at, you know, yes, wise attention, how simple. And just the momentum of our mental habit patterns, and you know, how hard it is to remember when one is in the thick of things, you know, wise attention. And you know, use the word balance at one point, and finding that balance of sort of letting it pass through without attaching to it, and not, like, you know, not bypassing it either. And
Yeah.
you know, just it was also just really helpful to just reflect on the fact that wise attention and wise association, like, in a way, that's not complicated. And yet, yeah, and obviously certainly not easy. So just something that, you know, just came up. I mean, the reflections and the verse were beautiful, and and as is the kind of simplicity of the point. And but I would just say, you know, any if anything else arises, any other reflection on, I mean, other than, yes, like the answer is the path, but any reflections on, you know, wise attention versus the power of habit patterns.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
Well, this is crucial. This is like the core of the practice. Healthy mind, wholesome mental states. And our habit patterns are often like, how could they do that to me? Or this isn't the way I want it to be. It shouldn't be like this. It's too soon. It's the wrong time. It's unfair. It's, you know, we go through a whole litany of what people have said, what people have done, what we've said, what we've done, what we've not done, you know, the whole thing. And if instead we were to look at the blessings in our life, even if we have one good friend, even if we just can tune in to YouTube and listen to a talk from a wise teacher, even if, you know, we have the ability to walk outside in the forest or nature somewhere, even if, you know, we can still reflecting on our own behavior. How might I change myself in order to have more ease and be more easy to live with, to be with. You know, there are just so many ways in which we can turn the mind to the wholesome, to the reflections that help to lift us up, and to make the way going forward smoother instead of that rough path of our old habit patterns. And to really recognize too that we have the ability as human beings to change those habit patterns. When we think, well, I'm just, this is the way I've always been. So what? You know, it's like, how many more lifetimes do you want to be like this? You know, it's like we can do that. And the other thing that's just incredibly amazing is, you know, like Neil was saying, we have this ability to reflect on our craving. We have the ability to reflect on our you know, the way the mind can come to peace in meditation. And we can feel it, and we can know it, and we can know that it's there, and we can have a sense of how it happens. And we can, as human beings, draw in the spiritual energy, evoke it. We can evoke care and love for someone halfway around the world like Ling and her family. What an amazing ability. You can feel it in your whole body. This is a kind of superpower, we need to come back to. We can be loving in the face of all kinds of challenges and difficulties. Selfless, so, to really appreciate this amazing gift of being human and make use of it at every turn, instead of our habit of being self-absorbed. So just a few ideas there. Yeah, thank you, Linda. James?
Thank you, Aya. I really appreciated the passage, and it sort of brought up kind of conflicting feelings, really, because you read it and you feel uplifted by like the human potential, or the potential that it suggests is there, and how things could go. But on the other hand, then I feel uplifted and happy and sort of joyful and grateful. But then I feel like, but it seems so far away, It seems like there's so much work to do. And you look around in the world and you see there's lots of fools there, really, as it says. But then I remember to be grateful for my practice, to see how far I have come, and remember to see that though there are a lot of fools out there, if you look, they also have good qualities. That, thinking of someone I know, they are in some ways very greedy and materialistic, but at the same time they're also very giving to people around them and quite generous. So it's it's like conflicted feelings. On the one hand, it's uplifting and inspiring. On the other hand, it's kind of like, oh, there's so much to do, and it describes this perfect world that seems so far away. And yeah, I guess, oh, it's yeah, there's so much work to do, but at least I'm on the way, I suppose. I don't know. Yeah,
I think when we think there's so much work to do, maybe it's better to just turn back to the present moment. Like, what's the work to do right in this moment? It's not overwhelming. I can change this particular mental state. I can put my attention on the generosity of that person. And I can know that the part that's materialistic and greedy is suffering. Poor baby. This is part of human life and samsara. And so, like having not to act like we don't see it all. We need to have the wisdom to see it, but we can put our attention on the good in a way that increases it. And when we feel overwhelmed, it's because we're moving into the future, or we're trying to see, like, how do I manage all this whole heap, when the whole heap isn't there at the same time. We can look, what is the work right now? And that's really what gets us through the really tough times. What is the work before me right now? Okay, right now I've got to change the bandages. And then we'll worry about feeding someone, whatever, it's like, well, it's doable. We keep going somehow. And I love your reflection on, we have come a long way. There's a lot of good being stored up here, and I keep adding to it.
It does paint a beautiful picture that you can draw upon for inspiration to carry you along, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's more than a picture, you know. It's like we are storing up merit all the time. We are building our good qualities and our karma. We're changing our character in a positive direction. Every person, you know, who's willing to like tune in at this time, you know, once a week or once a year, whatever it is, you know, every time we turn towards the Dhamma, we're, you know, we're developing that goodness, and it matters.
I try to keep things simple with not massive expectations. I think that's pretty good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Julie?
Hi, this is Kat with Julie's
Hi,
sister.
Kat.
I want to try to put this as succinctly as possible because it's a struggle that I meet frequently when my mind is fatigued. It is thinking that the negative is reality and that attempts to turn towards happy thoughts is aversion. And that the happy thoughts are less real than the negative thoughts. And by shunning the negative to turn towards the happy, I'm somehow not practicing right and am complicit in a form of aversion. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's important to see those nuances. You know, like is aversion behind this? Not to make too much of it, because if we think, well, maybe there's some aversion in here, and it's not like it's really in your face, don't worry about it. But if, you know, like to recognize that kind of thinking that says, well, this negativity, this is the real thing. We have to catch ourselves there and recognize that there's dark and light both in everything. We can look at the dark, we can look at the light, we can see the dark in the light and the light in the dark. You know, we can see light in everything, we can see dark in everything. And as we practice like that, then we get more, it's like we get more real. You know, when you have that kind of idea that the real thing is the negative, the downside, remind yourself that no, there's light in here too. If we're just like painting everything roses, that's not true. Not in this world. We got to know that there's the downside too. And when we look at it like that, try to come at it a bit more objectively. First of all, we need mindfulness. We're strengthening our mindfulness. We're strengthening our wisdom so that we can see it all as it is. And that, you know, labeling it being I'm an optimist or I'm a pessimist. I see the dark, mostly the dark. I see mostly the light. That's just like touched with delusion. So when we really look at anything, you can see both. It's the nature of samsara. I mean, there's no job that you wholly like. There's no job that you completely hate. There's always parts of it that are the other side. And so, you know, just trying to help the mind become more objective, have the mindfulness. There's a bit of a separation. We're not owning it. We're just observing and just seeing the way it is, even our own body, even our mind, the thinking part of our mind, the habitual part of the mind. There's good things in there. There's not so good things in there. First step is seeing it and knowing which are good and which aren't. And then the Buddha talks about, you know, when he says, notice the mind, you look at the state of the mind. He says, know whether this mind has a desire in it or not? Is this mind consumed by ill will or not? Is this mind consumed by greed or not? You know, it's like there's just, or, you know, what is there? Is there sensual desire here or not? And then that's it. You know, just know. That's the first step, to really know, to see it. And then once we've accepted this is how it is right now, we can then start to move in the direction of doing something to change it.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, everyone.